Hi everyone, it's Reba. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my new apartment. If you watched my last video, you saw that I was moving from San Francisco to New York. I'm here, I'm in New York, and I've got my new bookshelves up behind me. Today I am filming the mid-year book freakout tag. This tag is great because it allows me to kind of check in with my reading halfway through the year, see where I'm at with my reading goal, and think back on some of my favorite books I've read so far. I made this video last year and it was super fun. I was definitely planning on doing it again this year. However, I didn't expect I'd be like on the other side of the country when making it. I started out the year in San Francisco. Halfway through the year, I moved to New York. This is building my character. A cross-country move is so much. It was really exhausting emotionally, physically. Yeah, it's really, really stressful, but once we kind of got the apartment settled and our furniture and our, like my bookshelves, and then things always fall into place, and I definitely felt like, okay, like more myself, and yeah, it's starting to feel really good here. Of course, we miss all of our friends back in San Francisco. And I am missing the weather there right about now. It is so hot here, and it is, I think it's going to take a lot for me to acclimate to the humidity here. I grew up in a dry climate. I've been living in San Francisco, which has an unusually chilly summer. And it never gets very hot. It has very moderate temperatures all year round. San Francisco does not play by normal seasonal rules at all. And so going from a really moderate climate to New York, where it's like very hot here and very humid, is a big change. But really, besides the weather, New York has been so fun to move to, and everyone here is really cool. Yeah, we've just had a really good time starting to explore and get to know this city and find ourselves here. And I cannot wait to do some library vlogs in the public libraries here. I've already visited a couple. I got my library card, and it's just been really, really exciting. I will now use the mid-year book freakout tag to look back on the past 6 months, reading-wise. So, let's see, just really quick, a goal check-in. I had made a goal to read 52 books by the end of this year. By the end of June, I had only read 19 books. I had a couple of slow months, and especially June was the month we moved in. I only read one book, I think. Yeah, and then, yeah, it was really hard to read and be in that kind of mindset for part of the year when we were all in the midst of transitioning, packing, moving. I did listen to some audiobooks as I was packing and cleaning the apartment back in San Francisco. But when I started putting the apartment together here in New York, I wasn't in the mood for audiobooks, more in the mood for music. So I ended up just listening to music here. That made up some of my reading, I guess, some audiobooks when I couldn't just sit down and read. I did read some really wonderful books so far this year. I went back through and looked at everything I've read. So although I've only read 19 books, which is not ideal if I want to finish out the year reading 52 books, but like I'm trying to be gentle and compassionate with myself, because it's okay. Like, whatever I end up reading by the end of the year, it's more about the fact that I made time to read, because I know that's good for myself. So that's what's important. That being said, let's go through my answers to the tag questions. And yeah, first question is the best book you've read so far this year. I'm going to pick 3. The first book being Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I borrowed this from the library, and I read this back in February. And I mean, it was beautiful. Giovanni's Room is a classic, and James Baldwin is well known and well respected, and so I was looking forward to this book and expecting to really enjoy it. I knew a little bit about the plot, but really I went into it just knowing what I had read of James Baldwin in the past, which was If Beale Street Could Talk, and I adored it, and I loved how he wrote characters and how he represented love. It absolutely exceeded my expectations. It was just stunning and beautiful, and it broke my heart, and it was emotionally really effective. Giovanni's Room is about an American man living in Paris during the 1950s, and through the book he's talking about his experiences with an Italian man that's also living in Paris, named Giovanni, and they meet in a gay bar one evening, and their relationship ensues after that. It's told with such heart and pain. The politics around being gay during that time, and how these characters are existing in kind of these fringe communities and trying to live and not be restricted, but also dealing with the reality of how they're treated, and what that means to claim a queer identity at that time. It was absolutely beautiful, devastating, but I highly recommend it. And if you haven't read James Baldwin, it's a beautiful place to start. The second book I want to bring up from my favorites so far this year is Birnam Wood by Eleanor Catton. Not in the same category at all as Giovanni's Room. It was more of a thriller and really just fun. And I remember listening to an interview like shortly after reading the novel, where the author was speaking about the book, and she was influenced by I think Shakespeare's storytelling in Hamlet, and she also like has a deep love for well-written literature, and at the same time wanted to write something that was really fun and enjoyable to read. And I totally felt this way about the book, that not only did I feel like the writing was top tier and just well written, but it was fun to read. It was exciting, and just a good plot. So it was good plot, interesting characters, and fun. But basically, Birnam Wood is about several characters, but centering mostly on this anarchist gardening collective in New Zealand. They get involved with a tech billionaire, kind of make a deal with him to use some land for their gardening collective that may or may not be owned by him, and the gardening collective, two of the characters in it start to realize they might have gotten in over their heads, partnering with a billionaire with very different motives than them, and it just tumbles and collides into this wild, shocking ending, and it was really fun. All the different characters' perspectives were done really well, kind of in a satirical way, showing how different perspectives interact with climate justice. It was a really, really fun book, and I definitely recommend it. if you're looking for something fun and a good summer thriller. Next book that I have with me that I read most recently, that's a favorite, is The Flamethrowers by Rachel Kushner. I had never read Kushner before. I bought this book because I knew Kushner was from the Bay Area or San Francisco, and I know she's a really beloved American author, contemporary American author, and I was just blown away. I think that the lit fic readers need to jump on more Kushner. We need to be reading more Kushner because I think she, I don't know, I think a lot of people in lit fiction need to be reading her if they aren't already. I was like, how have I not read Kushner yet? This is phenomenal. This was a really great book, and I can't wait to read more from her. Yeah, it's a really expansive novel. The Flamethrowers, it's about a woman moving from Nevada, from the western United States to New York to pursue art. And I happened to start reading this as I was moving from San Francisco to New York. And I grew up in the Mountain West, in that region of the United States. And so it also just resonated so strongly with me in this time of my life. And so I think that also made it quite exceptional for me. But on a level of like literature, it just is so well written. It feels like a very American novel in that there's, especially to me, because she writes about so many scenes and landscapes that I'm familiar with, and then she talks about New York. It's specifically set in the 70s, and so she's drawing on the art scene in New York during that time. And there is so much like history in this book, so she writes all fictional, the characters are all fictional, but it's woven into history in a way that they feel so real, like almost like they are real. She was inspired by real people, but all of her characters were fictional in this book, which I don't know, I think is more impressive than I'm making it sound, but she just, I don't know, her characters just felt so alive and real against this real background, right? But the character moves from Western United States to New York, and then also spends time in Italy, also in the 70s. There is some time jumps just to give context to this family, this Italian family, that is a major part of the book. But the way she strings everything together, this book was just so phenomenal, and just I don't know, I loved it so much, and I'm so excited to read more Kushner. Next question, finally, the second question is the best sequel you've read so far. The book I'm going to talk about I read in July, so not in the first 6 months, but I have been reading the Southern Reach trilogy this year, and so I had read Annihilation, the first book in the trilogy, earlier in the year, and then this month, July, the second book, which is Authority. And although this is the only sequel I've read, I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good, and in terms of a sequel, it built on Annihilation in a way that gave us more answers to what was going on in the first book, but it's in a different format. And I like I think I like how authors do this, but I don't read a ton of series, but I enjoyed the form switching, and I'm not sure exactly. There's one more book, and then there is a fourth book coming out later this year, so I'm not sure if each book is going to be so different in form. But for example, Annihilation is written in like a record keeping, so in like a log logbook format. So the main character, the information is narrated to us through a logbook. And in the second book, it's more like a noir or like a spy type thriller. I will be speaking more about these books later this year. I am going to do my third installment of my new weird discussion. I had read some other books that I thought I was going to do the third part in, but I did not enjoy those books enough to talk about them. So I'm going to talk more about the Southern Reach trilogy later on in another video, but I know that I did like this book, and yeah, I think it was a really great sequel, and I'm excited to read the rest of the series, and I'm excited to have read them in time for the fourth book to come out. So that's exciting. Next question is, new release you haven't read yet but want to. I have 3 that I'm interested in reading. Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino, and Alphabetical Diaries by Sheila Heti. I'm really excited for all of those. People have been saying great things about them all. Next question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I don't really keep up with that. I don't read a ton of new releases unless I have already started to see good things about them or have heard things about them that make me interested in reading them. So I don't really have an answer for that. The next question is biggest disappointment. My biggest disappointment was one I read on audio, which may or may not have had anything to do with it, but it was How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. And I was really excited to read this one because it sounded right up my alley. It sounded like a literary fiction, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic type setting that looks at humans in the future dealing with the aftermath of a unearthed disease from a prehistoric time. So very fascinating premise to me, and I was really looking forward to it, had read good reviews, but it just didn't work for me. I found the scope was too large, that it left me wanting a lot more personal, intimate associations with the characters because it was like a very character-centered book. Having it so, there were so many characters and the scope was so big, and they were all connected. It just felt like too much, and for me, didn't feel as centralized as I'd wanted it to, and so it wasn't what I was expecting or hoping for from the book, and ultimately left me disappointed. The next question is about what book was my biggest surprise. And that was another audiobook that I did, and that was The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. This one really surprised me in how much I enjoyed it. I actually really love Britney Spears and have always been a big fan of her. And yeah, her music and just Britney as a person. And so it wasn't because it was Britney Spears' memoir that I was like hesitant in thinking that I would love it, but just celebrity memoirs in general, I'm a little wary of. And so that was why I think ultimately I was really surprised in how effective the memoir was. I enjoyed reading it on audio. I think Michelle Williams does the narration. Yeah, it was ultimately just a really heartbreaking memoir, although like we know a lot about her story and what has happened from different media resources. Hearing her tell it was really evocative and emotional and heartbreaking, and it was really horrific. Hearing her talk about the details of the conservatorship and what she was feeling at the time and what she was experiencing when when the rest of us were just seeing paparazzi photos and her just getting destroyed in the media. And so I'm glad she was able to put her own book out there, and I think it was a really important memoir. Favorite new author, I spoke at length already, but I do think Rachel Kushner is a favorite new author for me. Although this wasn't, Flamethrowers is not a debut, this is a new author to me, and I'm itching to pick up more from her. I think I'm going to go to the Mars Room next. That one is sounding really interesting. Newest fictional crush. I don't think I had an answer for this last year. I don't typically read looking for a fictional crush, but I did find Catalina from the novel Catalina by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio. Such an endearing and just delightful character, and she just seems like someone who I would want to hang out with and hear her tell me the like crazy things she's up to. A memorable character. Next is newest favorite character. My answer for this would have to be the unnamed character, the unnamed woman narrator in Pond by Claire Louise Bennett. I don't know. She was also delightful, but in a different way from Catalina, where I felt like at one with that character in some ways. I don't know. Just, it is also a very immersive book because you're very much almost in a stream of consciousness, very much internalized in the character, in the narrator of Pond. And I just felt very seen in the book, and I really loved that character. So probably my favorite, although I've been just spoiled with good characters in the books I've been reading so far this year. Book that made me cry, that would be Giovanni's Room. I don't know if I really physically cried, but that one is the most emotional and most heartbreaking book I think I've read so far. Book that made you happy, that would be The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. I read that on audio while I was packing, and I was so surprisingly delighted by the book. Something that is like, felt like it could be a really dense sci-fi novel, and it turned out to be so much more than that. It was a very sweet and lovely novel about friendship and acceptance, and I really enjoyed it, and it really, really made me happy. It was a really warm book, which I find unusual for sci-fi. The most beautiful book that you've bought so far this year, my answer for that one is this book that I've talked about in my birthday vlog, because I bought it then, but it's The Emissary by Yoko Tawada. And although it's a really simple book, I love the design so much. This little boy on an orange, I like how it wraps around this slim little spine, but it's, I think, a beautiful book. And what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Mainly, I do need to read the rest of the Southern Reach trilogy. I have Acceptance to go, and then I think I'll read these through. I'm not quite sure if I'll include the final book. Maybe the final book will be like an addendum to part 3 of my New Weird series. We'll see. And then otherwise, I always hope to read more and more off my own shelves. I would love to tick away at what I already own before buying a bunch more. So that is also part of my goal, and I just hope I can make it to 52 books by the end of the year, but I'll be happy with whatever I end up reading. That's it. That's the end of the tag. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.